We're actually doing some interviews now, for example, and hiring another engineer. And we've changed something about our interview process that I think you're going to find interesting and odd. There's a story I like of this guy who he was drafted into the NFL, and he was drafted out of college at 199th place. That's awful. You don't have to know much about football and sports to know at 199th, you are not that valuable. Not only was he drafted 199th, but he became a fourth-string quarterback. A lot of teams don't even have a fourth-string quarterback. If an NFL team goes through their first three quarterbacks, they'll end up having to put in someone like a wide receiver or another player who may have played quarterback in high school. Fourth-string quarterbacks are practice dummies. They don't see much playing time. How did this guy, why was he rated so poorly? Well, one of the reasons was he wasn't very good at something called the combine. The combine is a combine in harvesting is something that combines a bunch of different things to harvest grain. And when you think about, trying to harvest, a lot of people talk about recruiting, like employees and sports people, like they're harvesting grain. You got to winnow the resumes. You got to, harvest things, these recruits. And so the NFL has created something called the combine, which puts their athletes and prospective athletes through a rigorous set of tests. Running, lifting, throwing things. And this guy was terrible. His performance while running at the combine is one of the worst in the history of the combine. Here's the thing about the combine. Two guys from the universities, two professors or researchers from the University of Louisville start looking into the combine. And what they find was pretty weird. What they found was bottom performers at the combine turn out to be top athletes all the time. And top performers at the combine, people who pass this test really well, end up washing out of the NFL constantly. They don't even get past the first season. Combines don't work. It's not just physical test. They also studied something called the Wonderlic. The Wonderlic is like an IQ test. And, for quarterbacks, they think the Wonderlic is really, useful because quarterbacks have so much stuff to process. They got to be smart, right? Except you got a guy like Dan Marino who performed, I think he's got the lowest Wonderlic score of all time. I mean, according to the Wonderlic score, this guy is dumb. Dan Marino just happens to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Wonderlics don't work either. So the Super Bowl is this Sunday, and as you're watching the Super Bowl, there's a certain quarterback that's going to be on the field on Sunday, a guy named Tom Brady, who has been in the playoffs a dozen times now, over a dozen times. He's going to be in his 8th Super Bowl. He's won 4 of them already, and he's kind of maybe destined to win this other one at 5. The guy is, some people argue, the best quarterback of all time, and he was that fourth-string quarterback. He was that guy who was drafted 199th, and people didn't think he was very good. The combine completely missed him. The NFL almost completely missed this guy who is turning out to be such a phenom of a quarterback. I keep that lesson in mind because at High Rise, we've had to do a lot of hiring. When we started High Rise, when we split off from Basecamp, no one from Basecamp came to us. So in the last couple of years, we've done a pretty fair share of hiring and going through this whole process of team building. And I really keep this in mind of the fact that artificial tests like the combine don't work. They don't not just work for football, but there's plenty of studies now that show that these artificial tests don't work for finding teachers, for finding people in all sorts of other institutions. It's really hard to predict the winners without actual performance in actual real life opportunities. We're actually doing some interviews now, for example, and hiring another engineer. And we've changed something about our interview process that I think you're going to find interesting and odd. After we find some candidates and we do some initial screening of like looking at what their experience is, their first interview, we invite them into an online text chat. I bet you think that's weird, right? I bet you think, a lot of people out there probably think like, no way, you need to do phone calls at least, video, in person, right? You need that high bandwidth conversation to get to know the person. That's kind of artificial in the case of High Rise. At High Rise, All of our employees are remote. We spend the majority every single day in online chat. We don't spend a lot of time in video. We don't spend a lot of time in phone calls. We don't even have an office to go to, except for this little office that Lynette and I find ourselves in. If you work at Highrise, you're going to be on online chat all day long. So our first interview is online chat, and some people have found it off-putting. Some people it hasn't worked. And we know that that is probably a very bad signal. If talking with us and trying to have a very thorough conversation about something like this work, this job, isn't going to work for you, even in an initial interview, it's a pretty good sign that you're going to have difficulties working maybe as a remote employee full-time with a team like ours. And that is an actual type of performance. We're trying to get super close to what it's like to actually work with us. And of course, we're still going to make mistakes. I mean, this is still, in a way, artificial. That's why we also do a lot of sample projects, bringing someone in to actually work on something. Not some sort of weird code review where you do it on the blackboard, or you're in the hot seat and have to come up with an algorithm. We ask people to come in and do actual projects that we pay them for, like they are employees. And we see what that work looks like, because then we actually have an actual discussion that isn't artificial, and that isn't just like the combine that almost missed Tom Brady. All right, please do not return the product to the store. Great. Where are the directions? Quickly dip pre-glued dowels into a cup of water, making sure entire dowel gets wet. Give me a break. All right, I found a cup. All right, here we go, lots of dowels. Dip the dowel in, making sure the towel gets wet. This is so weird. Okay, this is gonna take forever. 4 dividers will only have 2 dowels on each side. I missed that part, so. Shit. Now I've gotta take 4 dividers. Of course they're all wet. Now they're fucking all slippery and shit. Oh, nuts.
Whoa, what happened while I was gone?
Stuff turned out a little less, doesn't quite match. Like, there's some brown and gray. It'll work just fine for now. Although we need to come up with some sort of a whiteboard solution. I hope you had an awesome Friday. If you're new here, please subscribe. Please like this video. I upload a new video every day talking about business and products and family and marketing. And I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.